Hey guys, we're going to be doing lesson 9.3 today in our Unit 9 math book, which is equivalent fractions and decimals. So pause the video if you don't have your book. Also, you're going to need your 9.3 note as well. The page is going to start on 507. And let's get started. We're going to mark up the problem together. All right. So it says Daniel spent a day hiking through a wildlife preserve. During the first hour of the hike, he drank 6/10 liter of water. So let's circle that. All right. How many hundredths of a liter did he drink? Okay. So what we have here is the fraction they're giving us is 6/10. They want us to write 6/10, but they want us to write it as hundredths. So today I'm going to show you how to do that. Of course, we'll start first with our model. All right, so let's shade in the fraction that is given to us in the problem, which was 6/10. So that would be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So make sure you guys are doing this with me in your books. All right, so 6 out of 10 are shaded. Now, what we want to do here is on this other shape, you'll see that there's an equal sign. We want to now make a fraction that's equivalent, but it's going to have a denominator of 100. So we still want this to look the same, guys. We're not doing anything different. So what I'm doing here is, if you guys remember how to make an equivalent fraction, it's not hard to find them if you multiply them, both the top and bottom, by the same factor, equivalent, 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 equivalent. All right, so let's look at our denominators here. I have a 10 and I have a 100. So I'm thinking to myself, 10 times what is going to give me 100? 10 times 10. Okay, now I have to get my numerator. And if I do it on the bottom, I'm going to do it on the top. So 6 times 10 would be 60 100ths. Okay, now I just realized they're doing the same thing here. Okay, so I'm kind of doing, I like to do it underneath my model. They did it over here. All right, so again, 10 times what equals 100? 10 times 10. If I did it on the bottom, I'm going to do it on the top. 6 times 10 is 60. So now there's 100 pieces here, 100 cubes, and I'm going to represent 60 of them. So I know that if I go down once for one long, that's 10. Just like yesterday, I'm just going to count by tens. So that's 10, 20, 30, 40, 50, and 60. Now you can see the models, guys, look the same. All we're doing is we're getting 6/10 from our problem, and I'm changing it to a fraction that has hundredths. So now we want to write 6/10 as a decimal using our place value. So 6/10 as a decimal. So we learned earlier this week, here's my decimal right here. I don't have any holes. We know that, guys, because none of these shapes are completely filled in all the way. So we're going to say 0, 1 holes. And how many tenths do I have? Well, I have 60 tenths. Okay? I'm sorry, I have 6/10. But if they want it as hundredths, okay, I could say I have, look at this model right here. How many hundredths? If I counted all of them, I would say I have 60. So what's interesting about this, guys, is that 6/10 is also equivalent. Ooh, that's a much bigger 0. 6/10 is equivalent to 60 100ths. They're the same thing. We see that here because of the model. There's a visual for us to see. And all we did was pop a 0 on to the end. These are equal. They're equivalent decimals, okay? So that's going to be the basis of the whole lesson. So we're going to say Daniel drank 60 100ths. We'll write it as a fraction first because we're writing it fraction and decimal today. All right. And he also drank 60 hundredths, but we want to say that as a decimal. Excuse my phone for buzzing. All right. So that's going to be key, making sure that we multiply. And here's a tip for today's lesson, guys. You're always multiplying by 10 because it's going to be, your denominator is going to be 10 and you're going to 100 every single problem today. So 10 always times by 10. Okay. All right. Let's go to the next page. All right. And it says Jasmine here collected, how would we say this decimal? Well, let's see. Yesterday I was talking about if there's a 0 as my whole number, I'm not going to say 0 and. I only say the and if there's a whole number here. So I would read this as 30 hundredths. Okay. Jasmine collected 30 hundredths of a liter of water in a jar during a rainstorm. How many tenths of a liter did she collect? Okay. So now it's starting me with hundredths, and now I want to know how many tenths. Okay. So I like how they give us the place value chart here. What I'm going to do is I'm going to use this place value chart because I can do this also with hundredths as well. If I have 0 holes, there's my decimal, and I'm just taking this number and I'm filling it in. Our question says, how many tenths of a liter did she collect? Well, if I look at my place value chart and I look at the tenths, I can see that she has collected 3 tenths of a liter, which is equivalent to 30 hundredths. They're the same thing. So again, just like the last problem, 30 hundredths would be equivalent to 3 tenths. They're the same thing. The reason why they're the same thing is because right here, for my 3 tenths, there's nothing there, but guys, nothing is the same as 0. That's another way to think of it as. So 3 tenths is the same as 30 hundredths. All right. So we would write 30 hundredths as 3 tenths. Okay. And you can just leave the decimal there. You don't have to put the 0 as a whole number. You totally can. It doesn't matter because 0 is worth nothing. Okay. Let's see. Let's look at this next one. All right. This is showing us the opposite of what we did on the last page. And I feel like this might confuse a few of us, but I think it's worth a look. Okay. So if we're writing 30 hundredths as a fraction, we know that 30 hundredths means equals, it's 30 hundredths. So 30 hundredths written as a fraction would just be, my numerator would be 30, and my denominator would be 100. All right. Now, again, guys, this is the same problem. The one at the top, the one at the top of this page about the rainstorm. She collected 30 hundredths, but what I want to know is, what does that equal in tenths? So I know my denominator is 10. Notice, what are we doing now since we're going from a bigger denominator, 100, to a smaller denominator? We're not going to multiply. We are going to divide. So this is the same thing, except we're doing division. So 100 divided by what would equal 10? The answer is always going to be 10 for this lesson. 100 divided by 10 is 10. If I do it on the bottom, I'm going to do it on the top. So 30 divided by 10, 10 times what equals 30? 3. So Jasmine collected 3 tenths, or as a fraction 3/10. Okay, so that's the gist of the whole lesson. What I want to do right now is I'm going to do another one over here. So if I said I want you to write 7/10 as an equivalent decimal, but I want it to equal hundredths. I want you to write it as hundredths. What I would do first is I know that my denominator, I want to get to 100 because I said you have to change it so that it's hundredths. All right, I know that. I'm going to look at my relationship here. All right, I'm going from left to right. 10 times what equals 100? 10 times 10 equals 100. And we know with equivalent fractions, if I do it on the bottom, I got to do the same thing on the top. So now I'm going to multiply 7 times 10 on the top. 7 times 10 would equal 70 hundredths. So that would be my equivalent fraction. So again, guys, 7/10 would look like this as a decimal. All right, this is my fraction, this is my decimal, 7/10. If I wanted to write that as an equivalent decimal, all I'm doing is writing the same thing. There's my 7/10, but I'm popping a 0 on the end. 7/10 is equivalent to 70 hundredths. Just like in fractions, 7/10 is equivalent to 70 hundredths. All right, let's do one more. So if I had, let's say, 50 100ths, and we want to write it as tenths. Now I know my denominator is 10. So I'm not, like this one, I was going from smaller 10 to a bigger 100. Now I'm going from a bigger number, 100, to a smaller 10. So if I'm going from big to small, always divide. All right, and 100 divided by what equals 10? 10. Always 10 with this lesson, so you won't forget that's that magic compatible number. So 100 divided by 10 is 10, and 50 divided by 10 would be 5. All right, so there's my equivalent fractions. 50 100ths is equivalent to 5/10. Now let's change it to decimals. Okay, here's my 50 hundredths as a decimal, and that would be equivalent. I'm going to write the same number, but now I'm not going to have that 0 on the end. So 50 hundredths is the same as or is equivalent to 5/10. All right. So I would recommend, if you are having trouble, pausing the video or joining me. I will be in our math room today from 9:30 to 10:30. And what I would like you guys to do today is you're going to do 6 problems today. So if you are on page, 509, you're going to do 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. And I want you to pay attention to the directions. It says write the number as hundredths in fraction form and decimal form. So what I would do is I would write your fraction here on this side and then your decimal here. And circle hundredths, guys. Okay? For 5, 6, and 7, you're not doing hundredths. Here you're doing tenths. Okay? Now, I'm going to give you a tip. So if you made it this far into the video, good job, because here's a good helpful tip. I'm looking at 2, 3, and 4. They're all tenths. I want to go to hundredths. So what am I going to be doing? Multiplying. Okay? For these, 5, 6, and 7, I see they're all hundredths already, and I want to go to tenths. So what am I going to be doing? Dividing, right? Because I'm going from bigger to smaller. All right? So you can send me a photo, or you could post them in the Flipgrid. All right, guys. I look forward to seeing your work, and I will see you soon.